Good morning, everyone. My name is Kim Maybon, and I am the board chair for the Corona Chamber of Commerce and owner of Creative by Design. Today is a great day with some important updates ahead, and we appreciate you taking time to join us. As all our weekly calls are informative, we continue to assist you in creating vision and bring a variety of speakers and topics. Today's event is sponsored by Turf Revolution. Turf Rev invites you to redefine outdoor living and join the movement to maintain maintenance-free artificial grass. Enjoy all the benefits of artificial lawns have to offer, including water savings, low maintenance, bug control, lasting green grass, and more. The transition from grass to artificial turf is simple and cheaper than you might think. Thank you, Turf Rev, for sponsoring this meeting. As a reminder, please use the chat button to ask any questions. Send your questions to the chamber host, and we will verbally ask them at the appropriate time. I'm happy to announce that next Monday, October 11th, will be our Coffee with an Entrepreneur featuring Chad Willardson. Chad is the founder and president of Pacific Capital and was also elected as Corona City Treasurer in 2016 and 2020. He will be giving away a few signed copies of his brand new book. You can purchase a book through the Chamber's website or that morning for Chad to sign. This event is held in partnership with the City of Corona and is free to attend. Register today at the bit.ly shown on the screen. Join us and the other 150 attendees registered next Friday at Good Morning Corona. This will be taking place at Eagle Glen Golf Club at 7 a.m., and we will feature a congressional update from Congressman Calvert. Get your tickets now as early bird pricing ends this Friday. To learn more, go to the bit.ly on your screen. November 12th, we will honor all veterans and active duty military. All those who served can register for free, and we are currently seeking sponsors, so please visit the bit.ly on the screen for more information. If you are a guest and not currently a member of the Corona Chamber, we welcome you to join our chamber family. Meetings like this are just one of the many benefits to being part of an active, thriving organization like the Corona Chamber. Please outreach to our membership development coordinator, Robert Yanez, and he can review the many incentives for both joining and referring a business to join. At this time, we will shift to our advocacy segment where our legislative advocate, Jeff Gibson, will share. Keeping a pulse on what's happening in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. can be a full-time job. With Jeff Gibson's thorough and complete research, he helps the Corona Chamber to act timely on projects and initiatives that help make a difference in shaping our community. As owner of Occidental Communications Group, his knowledge of complex political issues and the great relationships he has built ensure the Corona Chamber has the tools to be effective on behalf of the business community. Please help me welcome Jeff Gibson to share a legislative update.
Thank you. Thank you, Kim. I appreciate that. So a quick update for everybody on breaking news on the oil spill, because it does specifically deal with cargo. A cargo ship is responsible for the oil break. The boats are not supposed to be in the channel. They're not supposed to drop anchor for very good reason, because there are hundreds of pipelines between here and points west of here, all the way to the continental shelf for a number of good reasons that have all gone through CEQA, and shipping has not. That's why it's not a shipping lane, specifically by design, because it's only about 98 feet deep. Well, a cargo ship had dropped its 10-ton anchor and at 8:22 on Friday morning, tore a pipeline in two and dragged it for 105 feet, spilling 126,000 gallons, which sounds like a lot, but this is why oil is not measured in gallons. It's measured in barrels. A barrel has a 55-gallon equivalent, so it's only 4,000 barrels. For instance, when a freighter which ran aground off the coast of Huntington Beach in 1990, when it illegally went into the Catalina Channel, again, noting big ship, not supposed to be in small channel of water. In 1990, ran aground. It dumped 290,000 barrels of oil on the beach. That was an actual oil spill. The 4,000 barrels have fouled about 14 birds and about 100 yards of beach. Unfortunately, all of this would have been over if the newly minted mayor of Huntington Beach had decided on her own to announce on Twitter that she was canceling the International Air Show, which had sold over 1 million tickets for Sunday. And that's when it became a huge, huge incident. The oil spill itself had ended by 6 a.m. on Saturday and had actually been contained by 9 a.m. completely contained by 9 a.m. on Saturday, which is actually before the air show started on Saturday. So in any case, the thing that we're going to be hearing a lot about, which we're dealing a lot about, obviously we're going to be hearing a lot about marine safety coming out of this. One of the local congresswomen in members of Congress from Orange County, Katie Porter, is the subcommittee chairman for the Natural Resources Committee. She's already announced that there's going to be, she's going to be calling the Coast Guard and the local ports in to testify before her committee. You may remember her as being the person, the member of Congress on October 31st, 2019, who wore a Batgirl costume on the floor of the House to cast her vote to impeach President Trump over a telephone call. But she is a local character who is known for holding a lot of hearings like this. So you're going to be, that you will be hearing more from. But so I would expect, again, that Coast Guard rules that ships cannot be at anchor in the Catalina Channel if they are above of a certain size. And these ships, I don't know if you've seen them, are the length of the Empire State Building, and they are 15 stories tall. You can see them for probably 15 miles out to the ocean. So, I mean, they are substantial ships. So, in any case, and they're obviously not supposed to be in that channel. So that's breaking news on this. Going on to our slideshow, our slides on this. Currently, there are over 100 ships that are in the Catalina Channel awaiting to be offloaded. That does bring a substantial amount of issues that generally are not, obviously you cannot avoid seeing those if you are anywhere near the coast. If you see anything dealing with the coast, you're going to see the ships. So it is a big, it literally is a big issue. But there's a delay of only about 6 days. Go to the next slide, please. So the first point here is that largely invisible to us, and largely because of people like Jeff Miller who are on this call, the port has rebuilt itself from about 1967 through today. A huge amount of the port traffic, if this were 1967, would be ferries that are bringing workers to factory jobs, whether it's in canning of products at the Harbor Islands, whether it's the unloading of break bulk ships, where it's you've got stevedores with the huge hooks and big shoulders, like out of an old movie, or whether it's the Todd shipyards in Long Beach. A huge amount of the on-water traffic would be for ferries, because you did not have any of the bridges that you currently have in the Long Beach Harbor or the or the Los Angeles harbor. And the reason would be that you didn't have huge container ships coming in. So you went from about handling 400,000 containers in 1967 to handling about 900,000 containers in 1992 to handling 9.7 million containers last year. And that's just in the port of Los Angeles, which handles substantially more port traffic than Long Beach. And at any point, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. So going on to the next slide, Anthony. And so moving on from that, the change in employment is that it's become much more professional. It's become much safer. It has become much more organized from a real estate perspective, in that the port really is doing one main object here, which is unloading of containers. That's it. It's not building ships anymore. It's gone to other locations around the globe. It's not canning of tuna or any of that. Starkist is now in Micronesia. It is literally just, and there's a small amount of recycling. There's a small amount of materials handling, large scale, but given the fact that they're unloading 9.7 million container units annually, it really is just the one item. So with the specialization of infrastructure, next slide, Anthony, please. So it should be point 7. Like the Alameda Corridor, it cannot be understated. The port has gone from a location where containers were handled by hand trucks, were taken off with nets, where ships were unloaded with nets, and the greatest cost, in fact, in a very poorly written, poorly researched piece, George Will last week talked about a very old statistic, which is that it takes more, it's actually a higher financial cost to get get a container from across the county of Los Angeles than it does to get it across the Pacific. That's no longer the case. It's not even close to being the case. And that's because of the Alameda Corridor. What happened was the Alameda Corridor basically split the Alameda Boulevard into 2 pieces with a below grade railroad that runs up and runs through Corona at 15 different locations. The reason Jeff was so key on this at the time was he was one of the first local officials to demand that we have a map of all of the locations, because we knew that the Alameda Corridor was coming through and that it was going to create a moving wall of steel. Well, that moving wall of steel is going on, and we are creating those grade separations. We here have dealt with that with the McKinley grade separation when it was very unexpectedly funded. The McKinley grade separation being one of the lower impacted. And so going back to 2001, when Jeff joined the RCTC, that was when we here regionally sent to the port, sent to the federal government, sent to the state government, a list of priority grade separations to be done. And Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there have been, or Wes is on the phone call, I think of the 19, about 10 have been handled. Enough have been handled that about 90% of the traffic delays have been eliminated. And most importantly, the need for ongoing train whistles. Because previously, if you were in Corona in the 90s or before, train whistles were something that you regularly heard. It's the same in Placentia, it's the same in Santa Ana, it's the same throughout communities that have a lot of train traffic kind of quietly moving through town, you'd hear train whistles. Well, they don't anymore because of grade separations. But there were a lot of battles that went with that. And we went through those battles here with us. The reason we went through that was to make the port that much more efficient so that you could do in 1 month what previously it took you a full year to do in terms of taking containers off. So it really is a $10 trillion question for us. It really does provide hundreds of thousands of jobs, not hundreds of thousands of jobs at the port, but hundreds of thousands of jobs for freight forwarders, for very highly skilled executives that work with international companies to make sure we happen to be one of the locations with that economy. If you look at the 215 interchanges are going up into San Bernardino, if you look over to the left, all of those huge companies there are freight forwarding companies. That is one of the Silicon Valleys of freight forwarding. And so if the ports weren't doing that level of job, those jobs in Corona, Riverside area would not be there. And so it's extremely important for us to deal with that. As a secondary source, what you're getting are a huge amount of local truck traffic that obviously impacts us. We see containers on trucks. There are 19,000 truckers that work inside and outside the port, but that is a very, very small portion. We can all see the 3-mile long trains that are double stacked. Well, that's 10,000 truck trips that are taken off the road, and there's nobody, and that's just one train. So there isn't anybody that would prefer the old system to come back. And honestly, that's why even with a huge backup, even with a huge environmental issue that popped up over the weekend, this still is by far the most efficient system to be dealing with. The biggest issue that we're facing with supply chains is at source. It is not in an American port. It's not even in American factories as much as it is in China. And that is a huge, huge issue. Let's move on from there to the next one, Anthony, please. So Chinese ports have backups much, much larger than ours, which is a problem because they are actually producing the goods. There are some backups in Singapore. There are some backups in Malaysia. There are some backups in Thailand and in other countries in which we do a lot of export trade. But the biggest backup by far is in China, which leads you to the question, why would it be there? And the reason it's there is very specific. The Chinese economy is in a massive financial bubble. It's going through a huge loss. The Hong Kong index called the Hang Seng has not gone through a full trading session for financial companies going back to September 1st. Those companies have lost almost $3 trillion in value. And to give you an idea, the Great Recession cost the American financial system about $1 trillion. So they're only 6 weeks into this, and they're having a huge, huge struggle with their with the amount of financial capital available. What that is dealing with is the reason that this is becoming so vast is that just like in the 1990s, several different times, and then on from there, Asian economies generally use interlocking ownership. An interlocking ownership is when you own a good portion of your vendor, but you don't own all of your vendor, and then your vendor owns a good portion of you, and then the two of you together have been encouraged by the government to buy a real estate company that was failing. And then once you were in the real estate business, you bought the bank that the real estate company couldn't pay its mortgages back to. And so now you've taken a healthy international company like Toyota. This is exactly what happened in Japan in the 1980s. The government of Japan, instead of declaring that there was a recession going on in the real estate markets, just turned to Toyota, turned to Nissan, turned to several of its dozens and dozens of its companies, and said, okay, you're now in the real estate business. Go out and buy a real estate company, and go buy the bank, and go buy this. And at some point, when the money runs out, you now have an interlocking disaster. With Lehman Brothers and Bear Stearns and all of the things that started the Big Short, fortunately, and all of us were affected on this call, there weren't interlocking partnerships. And so the larger market was able to say, okay, we have a recession. There are things that we need to reform and figure out, but we don't have to worry that the entire economy is going to collapse. Fast forward, and what you also have in China is that you have a command and control of the economy. And one of the things that many people, including probably a lot of people on this call, don't realize are that the Chinese government itself is the majority owner of every company listed on any Chinese stock exchange. I will say that again. The government of China controls well over 50% of the shares, the voting shares of almost every company, if not every company, on its public exchanges. And it has been encouraging since 1998 for that all of its companies do not sell their distressed assets, that they keep them on their books, and that they continue to mark them up as if they were increasing in value. So if anyone has heard of ghost cities, for instance, and China has denied that there are ghost cities, well, they've had to start tearing them down because they're causing so many problems. Those are half-finished cities that can have millions of people live in them. If you've heard of the One Belt, One Road project, where China is going around trying to get countries to have it build ports or railways or all these things. And they're railways to nowhere. They're railways from Nairobi to Kilimanjaro. And they're spending $10 billion. Well, that's because there aren't any domestic projects to justify the tremendous amount of profits that they're reporting, but those profits are only on paper. So they need these countries' hard currency to continue to pay their own workers. Well, that bubble burst when Evergrande, which was supposedly the most profitable real estate company in the world, announced back in June that it could no longer pay its rent on its corporate headquarters. And it was no longer going to be paying any of its vendors. And when their vendors called to try and settle, they tried to settle with them for things like empty factories. Yet the owner of Evergrande, who was related to a previous president of China, is said to be worth $100 billion. So what you have here is that China, for instance, has had to go through a restatement of its entire GDP going back to 1998 to reveal that 40% of its economy, not the 15% that we would expect from a developed economy, but 40% of all of its GDP is connected to real estate development, domestic real estate development. That means that the actual size of the Chinese economy is substantially smaller. I am not criticizing the Chinese people or anything about that, but what ends up happening there are trillions and trillions and trillions. The Chinese public debt is over 3 times our size, and their economy on its best day is only 2/3 our size. And their currency is not a reserve currency. So countries don't settle their interpersonal debts with they settled them with dollars, not yuan. So this is creating a gigantic problem. What's happening in our supply chain, because of this problem, our factories don't have enough money to pay their workers. So they're working 3 days a week. And the American consumer is doing things like consuming. The Canadian consumer is doing things like consuming. The Mexican consumer is doing the same thing. So there is a gigantic backlog, especially from North America, for goods that have been on backlog for 18 months. I'm sure several of us, I know I have a couple of things I ordered from Amazon, and they're still on backlog. They're in one case, it's going back 18 months now. And so this is why this is happening, is it's showing up with physical goods. So, but in any case, I'm happy to discuss any questions that you would have, or local effects. So there are supply chain disruptions. They are running back now several weeks. It is something that for you to consider. It is not generally a problem of the American supply chain system. Things that are being, for instance, things that are being produced in the United States, including even agricultural goods, are having no problem getting to the market. There are some disruptions in that when you have to close your industrial farming system for the better part of a year. I mean, it does take animals time to grow. It does take food time to grow. So that's one of the things that we're going through. That's one of the things that we're going to be going through over the next several months. But that is not tied to why you're not getting your computer, or if you ordered some specialized goods from a factory, you're seeing factory volume at 1/3 if you're in China. So in any case, happy to discuss any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jeff. Anthony, do we have any questions?
There is one question at the moment regarding the oil spill specifically. And that question is, District Attorney Spritzer is raising quite a bit of fuss over the spill and the headquarters for the company with the inspection agency. Is there any insight on that?
Well, so initially the problem was thought to be with the pipeline company, and that is not the case now. It has been confirmed. The Coast Guard is going to be facing quite a lot of problems because the Coast Guard has known since 8/22 on Friday that the problem was with a cargo ship tearing the pipeline into two and then dragging it for 105 feet, and then pulling on its anchor in such a way that it almost knotted the end of the pipeline. So it's pretty clear that the problem isn't with District Attorney Spitzer is right to be asking for inspection records and things like that. But based upon the reporting of the first day or two, which were that there was some financial trouble with the pipeline company, and that the pipeline itself was 20 years out of date, which a regulator obviously should have had an opinion on. That the pipeline itself had been cited for a number of different issues. But unfortunately, that was where the Coast Guard needed to step up and say, yes, our bad. We were told at 8/22 that there was a serious problem. We took over 150 calls from pilots of major cargo ships that they were seeing this problem offshore between 8/22 and 9 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. And our first ship arrived about 11 a.m. on Saturday. So the vision we all have of there's a problem with a boat and magically there's a Coast Guard cutter out there and within 30 seconds. Yeah. It took 12 and a half hours of professionals saying, we're actually changing the way that we're piloting ships to try and maintain the oil that's out here. Can somebody please send a ship with a boom to start sucking this, up? yeah, it's going to be, you're going to see a lot of discussion on this. The discussion is specifically going to be with Coast Guard response time, and that the fact that the cargo ships should not have been there to begin with. I would expect that the district attorney probably for Orange County probably changes to follow that information.
Thank you, Jeff. We did get one more question in, and that is,
Sure.
Can you discuss the viability of legislative trips to Sacramento and DC?
So, yeah, I'd be happy to. Currently, you can't get within a square mile of the U.S. Capitol or the White House, and there are no plans to open that to public access anytime soon. In Sacramento, no one has been allowed in the building or the complex since March of 2020. So currently, we're there, and there are no plans to open the complex anytime soon. So under the rules adopted by the houses. So yeah, we're in a holding pattern.
Thank you, Jeff. There are no further questions.
All right, thank you so much, Jeff, as usual, for sharing that information with us. As always, if you have any concerns regarding legislative matters, you can reach out to Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes and Senator Richard Roth, both of whose contact information is provided on your screen. All right, at this time, we'd like to thank a few individuals for joining the call today. We have former state assembly member and former Corona City, Corona Mayor and council member and successful business owner, Jeff Miller. We have former Corona Mayor and Citizen of the Year, Jason Scott. We have Corona Vice Mayor, Wes Speak, former City of Corona Council member, Yolanda Carrillo, Brad West from Assemblymember Sabrina Cervantes' office, Pete Cervantes from Riverside County of Education, and Leah Peterson with SoCal Gas. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We'd once again like to thank today's sponsor, Turf Revolution. They offer a variety of quality artificial grass, affordable for all budgets and guaranteed to be green for all year long. Learn more at turfrev.com. If you would like to sponsor a future business briefing, please contact the Chamber. Register now to join us next Wednesday, October 13th, for more advocacy news. Thank you everyone for attending. Our meeting is adjourned.